Good afternoon and welcome to this parent-teacher meeting related to John and his work ethic within the classroom. To begin, I'll be talking about my general observations about John. He is friendly with most of his peers, which is both a good and a bad trait to have. It's good in the sense that he'll get along with all of his peers and that they'll be friendly to him, but also bad in the sense that it can cause easily distractions in the classroom, which relates to his other issues with the class. He typically doesn't pay attention to the class structure, which relies on lectures. He doesn't seem to like listening to mostly verbal presentations or just text-based things. They're usually long-winded when he described it to me. He does seemingly do all of his work and his homework. He keeps up with all those things. He's given extra time when he needs it. He's allowed to take his assignments home, so he keeps up his grades. It's just his lack of focus is the issue in the class. I did notice that when imagery and video is used, that he does pay more attention, and that results in a more calm, cool, and collected classroom. Moving on to his strengths and areas of need, he, as I mentioned earlier, completes all of his work, which is always a bonus to have in a student. He does have a good amount of background knowledge when it comes to the content area, which I'll describe later on, which also good. And he works well with others. There are many times when he's paired up with people that he helps them out, they help him stay on task. It's a symbiotic relationship, really. Areas of need, as I mentioned, the main focus is his lack of focus, and which will usually create more distractions. For when he's not focused, he'll be on his phone, he'll be playing on his laptop, he should be taking notes. It's just something that is a big concern in the area that requires most of the help. So the content area, as I mentioned, which he does have knowledge in, we're focusing right now on American history and civics, and the area in particular is the Cold War. We're focusing on the relationships that are between American and international relations, both politically and culturally, particularly in the time period between the 1950s and the 1970s. So we're looking at examples such as America and Russia and how that's the main focus of the Cold War. You have events such as the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Red Scare. You have political events within the country itself, like McCarthy and his trials. So we're looking at all those events, and that's where my lesson plan comes from. Assessment before my lesson plan was implemented was mostly focused on John and what would be mostly helpful for him within the class. So as I mentioned, he does have a good understanding of the concepts, whether it's through his own reading or secondhand knowledge that might have occurred over time. He does have good knowledge of the Cold War era. He does, again, complete his assignment, so I wasn't worried about him not doing the assignment. It's just more so him being focused on it, so it wouldn't take as much time as other students in the class. So along that same line, I noticed that he does like imagery, which is where the main idea of my assignment came from, was focusing on imagery throughout the years. And I wanted to make sure there's no long-winded verbal-based lectures within the assignment so that he would not lose track of himself, mostly just directions written on the paper, short and sweet, so he understands what he's doing and help from me when needed. And as long as he didn't become unfocused, he wouldn't be a distraction to anybody else in the class, especially his partner in the assignment. Moving on to the actual lesson plan. Lesson plan relied heavily on imagery. It was based around propaganda and political cartoons that were found between the years of 1950s and 1970s. The students were broken off into pairs, and they were each assigned one of those years between those 20-year period. They would take that year, go on Google, look up, for example, like 1950 political cartoon, America, and that would hopefully get them something. They were required to find two, one that was based on American politics, and another that was based on international affairs between America and a different country. So they probably could find something like America, Cuban Missile Crisis, like a political cartoon for that. As the pairs would complete their assignment, they would submit their research to the teacher, and she would compile it into one large PowerPoint that all the students could look at afterward, and they could use as a study tool, as a reference for any help they need. The assignment relied on the concept of universal design for learning, which means that all the students are able to complete the same assignment without any of them feeling left out, which was, I think, really important for John because he got along with all his peers so well that I didn't want him to be doing a different assignment from anybody else. So I really aimed to make sure this assignment was applicable to all the students as opposed to one student being capable of doing it. So through this overall experience I had, the main thing I got was knowing how to implement UDL properly. This is like one of my first times trying to do it properly, and I did know there's a few loopholes I had. I was focusing on making sure that John would be able to be a part of it, which made me neglect other students in the class. I made modifications that might have not been necessary to it. So some students completed way earlier than they should have. I noticed some students that were in their pairings not working, neither student completed a thing by themselves. So I definitely will work on factors in this assignment to make sure that there's accountability and a better use for it to be implemented than leaving it by itself. Overall, I had a good time learning about helping students such as John who have ADD. It was a good experience for me, and I hope to use this experience in my future career. Thank you.